They were saying there's sex in this book and kissing in this book, and we can't do it. And I was like, really? Because y'all didn't know Christians had sex? Black Christians have sex all the time. Like I was told that you couldn't even mention the word panties, and I had people taking off their panties in my book. So.
What's good? I'm Nikisha Elise Williams, and this is Black and Published, bringing you the journeys of writers, poets, playwrights, and storytellers of all kinds. Today's guest is Victoria Christopher Murray, author of Pride, a Seven Deadly Sins novel. Pride is the fifth book in the Seven Deadly Sins series, a concept Victoria developed after working as a writer for the past 25 years with more than 30 titles to her name, including her debut, she initially self-published.
I sent a package express mail because I believe in instant gratification. And all I did was put the self-published book in there. And I just wrote a short letter that said, here are the facts. I've sold 9,000 copies in 6 months. I sent myself on a 17-city tour. I need to become bigger, and now I need your help.
In those early days, Victoria said her strategy was guerrilla marketing, a tactic she learned from her own background in business. Now, as a full-time author and publisher, Victoria explains how building a resume helps her flesh out her characters. Plus, why it's important to understand and remember the pain, and how intimidation toward her own work led her to write something so different, it led to a Lifetime movie deal. That and more is next, when Black and Published continues. Victoria, when did you know that you were a writer?
Oh, I knew when I was a little girl. Seriously, the first thing I ever wanted to do was to be a writer. When I was about 7 years old, I wrote my first masterpiece. And I call it a masterpiece because I plagiarized all the masterpieces out there. It was called Betty and the Witch. And it was about a little girl who wore a red uniform to school with a hood. She had 3 bears who were her brothers and 3 pigs were her sisters. And their best friends were 7 little people who lived next door. But my mom gave it to my teacher. And when the teacher read it, she had the entire 2nd grade perform it as a play. That was the first time I wrote something, and I got attention and accolades for it. So from that point, that's what I wanted to do.
Okay. So from plagiarizing all the classics into one great masterpiece at 7.
That's right?
One great masterpiece at 7. How did this want to write carry into an actual life of writing as you grew older?
I never knew how to get there. I'm quite a bit older than you. So when I was growing up, we didn't see authors. Not only did we not see authors, but we never saw an author who looked like me. This is going to be a little embarrassing. I was in high school and I was in a predominantly white area, but the librarian knew how much I loved to read. I was reading everything in the school library. And one day she gave me a book and said, I want you to read this one. Well, it doesn't matter to me. You give me a book, I'm going to read it. And I turned it over and saw a picture of a Black man. And I said, what is his picture doing on the book? Because I had never been introduced in my first 14 years of life to a Black writer. There were no Black children's writers, because I was reading everything in the children's section. There was no such thing as young adult books. And the book was Native Son by Richard Wright. And then that white librarian made sure I had Black books. And I read and read and read. But as I was going to college, I didn't know how to be a writer because, again, I said there were no role models for me. And so I ended up going to Hampton and majoring in communication disorders. I went and got my MBA from New York University, but I never lost the dream to write. And it was my husband who pushed me. He brought us a computer, an Apple IIe. And then he kept every year saying, when I met you, you said you were going to write. You said you were going to write. When are you going to do this? And it took me 16 years, but the dream was already there. And that's how I became in 1997. I said, I'm going to do it. because before that point, life was getting in the way. So I was always saying, I can't write because I'm busy, I have a family, I have a job. And then my husband said to me, you know what, if you keep saying that, one day you're going to be 80 years old and you're going to wish you had done it and you're going to have a regret. And that scared me. That scared me. So I did it. I just wrote Temptation and the rest is history because my first book took off.
But let's talk about the takeoff. What was the publishing process like for Temptation? And now you've been doing it for so long.
I self-published Temptation, and I self-published not because I had been rejected. I had my MBA and I met my husband in grad school. My MBA was in marketing. His MBA was in finance. We thought we were brilliant. We thought the two of us would do this and we'd make all the money and put all the publishers to shame. Well, about 2 days after we self-published, we realized we weren't smarter than anybody because self-publishing, that four-letter word, especially in 1997, before social media, before anything, that was the biggest four-letter word in the English language, just the totally biggest word. But we still forced through. And we did something I called guerrilla marketing, where because we didn't have social media or anything. So we just came up with new ideas. And one of the things I totally realized was that you could use your surroundings and your people to help you. So we gave cases of books to our friends who wanted to sell. And it was near Christmas. And those people were selling because we gave cases of them to sell and we split the money in half with them, which is what we would have done with a bookstore. And my friends were out there selling, coming back for more cases. Then I had given my hairstylist at the hair salon a case of books. She must have sold 10 cases of books because people in the hair salon did that. So when she did so well, we started just going to hair salons and giving them cases of books. And then, of course, just going everywhere. I think I went to 17 cities in 6 months. We sold 9,000 copies.
In 1997?
In 1997. We came out in October. And we had done 5,000 copies. By December, we had to order more. We ordered another 2,500, then another 2,500, because by then I had found an agent.
Did you find an agent or did the agent find you?
I actually found an agent.
Okay.
And because I really didn't want to be self-published anymore, because it was hard. That was a hustle. It ain't nothing but a hustle.
I know.
Right? And so what I did was I went into the bookstore. And a good friend of mine who was an author as well, we read the acknowledgments of every book that we thought was like us because everybody thanks God, their mother, and their agent. And so we went in there and we made a list of all the agents, and then we kind of matched them to the top selling of those books. And I had 8 agents, but I decided to first send out a package to the top 4, who I thought were the top 4. And so I sent a package express mail because I believe in instant gratification. And all I did was put the self-published book in there. And I just wrote a short letter that said, here are the facts. I've sold 9,000 copies in 6 months. I sent myself on a 17-city tour. Here are the cities and the events I've done. I need to become bigger, and now I need your help.
They had no idea you were sending them this package.
No, I didn't even know what to do. I didn't know about queries and everything. Nobody. I didn't know any of them. Then I sent it on a Thursday, express mail. The next day on Friday, the phone rang. And that's just before caller ID. I almost didn't answer it because I was watching Oprah. I'll never forget that. Almost didn't answer it because I'm like, everybody, no, you don't call me during Oprah. And so I answered the phone, and it was Denise Stinson, who was one of the top agents in the country. She had read the first 50 pages. And so that's important for people who are listening to this to know. The agents will read the first 50 pages and make a decision what they're going to do. Because she read the first 50 pages. She said, tell me about yourself. Do you plan on writing more books? Because I'm not interested in a one book person. And she said, I'm going to read the rest of the book over the weekend and I'll let you know. Then on the Sunday, I was on the internet, and I'll never forget it because it was Super Bowl Sunday. So I was on the internet before our friends came over for the Super Bowl, and the phone rang and kicked me off the internet. Because remember when we used to be dial-up? I was pissed again. And I answered the phone, and it was another agent, Victoria Sanders. And she said that she had read the book. So this was by Sunday. I sent it express mail on Thursday. And she said she had gone to Amazon and looked at the reviews, and she had never seen reviews like that in her life. And
there was Amazon in 1997, 98?
Yeah.
It had just come out. Because it started as a bookseller. Oh my God.
That's all it was. It was only
books. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I was one of the first books on there. I was one of the very first books. And so I had 2 offers from her and Victoria Sanders and Denise Stinson. I never heard from Faith Childs and Marie Brown, who we really considered the top agent. She and I are good friends now. And she says, Victoria never misses the opportunity to tell people that I passed. That I passed on her.
Gosh. All right. So I love this story so much. I think the only other person who I've had that self-published in the 90s was Roy Glenn in my first season, who's actually my editor. He talked about self-publishing his first novel in like 95.
Yeah.
And then
that's a whole different world. It was a whole different world.
Because I self-published in 2017, and different is...
Think about that. There was no social media. There was no websites. We had just started using email. So there wasn't even any way for people to go on and look at websites. There was something on the internet called AOL Black Voices.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was all we had.
This story it's like a time warp, but I love it. But I want to, it's 2023. None of this is possible now. You can't send a package in the mail to an agent and expect them to call you on the phone.
I didn't know. So Lolita Files was the one who went with me into the bookstore. And Eric Dickey was the one who says, okay, let's just send them the packages, And I think probably one of the things that got them was it was an express mail package. It was important.
It was next day. And then you didn't even have a query letter. You just said, here I am. This is what I've done. This is what I did. And this is what I want.
That's all I said, because I had never heard of a query. So, but I was a business person.
Yes.
And I knew how to get to someone. I wasn't going to do a long drawn out thing. So I just said, dear Denise Stinson, here are the facts. And I put bullet points, just bullet points. I wrote it like a business letter because that's all I knew.
Oh my gosh. Once you got the agent, what was the next step in your writing journey? Because
well, so it sounds so easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
It took my agent 2 years to sell my novel.
The one that you had already self-published?
The one I had already self-published. It took her 2 years because I fell into 2 genres that were kind of clashing. I fell into women's fiction, not romance, but then I fell into Christian fiction. Well, I had never even read a Christian fiction book. I didn't know there was such thing as Christian fiction. I was just writing about people that I could relate to. And so at first, the mainstream publishers were saying to my agent, the Time Warners and the Simon & Schusters and everybody were saying things to her like, there's God in this book. That's not what we do. Then she said, well, we're not going to the right people. We need to go to the Christian publishers. They were worse because first they didn't like the title Temptation.
Of course not.
And I wanted to, I know. And I said, okay, I want to be published. So you can change the title to Crossing the River Jordan. I don't care.
Lead me not.
Whatever you need. But then they read the first 50 pages and they were saying there's sex in this book and kissing in this book and we can't do it. And I was like, really? Because y'all didn't know Christians had sex? Black Christians have sex all the time. I couldn't believe it. So we were almost blocked from the Christian Booksellers Association, almost blocked. I was told that you couldn't even mention the word panties. And I had people taking off their panties in my books. Take them off. But it was really, it was a tough 2 years because I'm waiting. And then one publisher even told Denise that they read Temptation and it was the worst book they had ever read. And editor said that. And I was like, the worst book you ever read? Like, that's really specific, you know?
And like in life? Like
In
there's
life?
millions of books.
And have you read 2 books or have you read, 20 books? I mean, it was just so, but I knew what I was supposed to write. And I stayed right there. I stayed there. And almost 2 years to the day, the first publisher who turned me down called my agent and said, do you still have that book by Victoria Christopher Murray? Because we're thinking, Time Warner, we're thinking about doing a whole line of books like that.
What year was this?
That was 2000. And then, so I had 2 books with them. And then remember the publisher that said it was the worst book they'd ever read?
Mm-hmm.
That was Simon & Schuster, who's done my last 30 books.
Talk about a testimony.
They've done my last 30 books.
Okay. So in that 2-year period before you knew that all of this milk and honey was on the other side, since we're going to stick with the God theme here, how did you weather those challenges and that rejection?
Man, that was hard. It was really, really hard because you feel like, well, maybe I need to stop. But you know what? I felt like I was in the middle of an ocean. I felt like I had gotten in a boat when I wrote the book and I was sailing. I wanted to get to the other side. And then for the 2 years, I was in the middle of the ocean. Couldn't get across. But I felt I was too far away to go back.
Mm.
And I didn't know how to get back. I didn't know how to stop. Eric kept saying to me, just keep writing. So I had a second book ready. And now my whole heart was in writing. And I had quit my job and everything. I mean, I was focused on full time. So it became a thing like, what do? You drop this and go back? Or do you plunge forward? And it was a little easier for me to keep plunging forward because I had one of the best agents in the business. So she kept saying, keep going. Eric kept saying, keep going. Lolita kept saying, keep going. And then there were little lights in the 2 years. It wasn't 2 years of a total desert. It was a desert, but it wasn't 2 years of a total desert. But I even looked at my agent calling me as a victory.
Mm.
And I was too far out to go back.
Yeah. Even in that 2-year process, you said you had another book ready. So as you kept going, you had the prospects of getting your self-published novel traditionally published, and then you were writing other stories just to have.
Yeah, I read another novel. Eric Dickey told me, don't stop writing. And that when they come for you, you'll have 2 books. And that's what I got, was a 2-book deal.
And now we are how many books later?
You know what? I really stopped counting at 30. I'm probably closer to 40, but I really did stop counting at 30.
Wow.
And I am 30 plus in 20 years. And you know what I like to tell people, and I want people to know this, when you talk about that 2-year period, and I talk about being in the middle of the ocean, there were only 2 directions I could go. I could go back to my old life without being a writer, or I could go forward to being a writer. There was no middle ground here. And I chose to move forward. And I think about how horrible being told it was the worst book they'd ever read, how book deals were coming up, but then falling down and, falling away. And I think about all of the times when I could have said, that's it. But then I wouldn't have 30 plus books. I wouldn't be a New York Times bestselling author. I wouldn't be a USA bestselling author. I wouldn't be a 5-time NAACP Image Award nominee. I wouldn't have any of that if I had given up.
And don't forget NAACP Image Award winner.
Yes, right? I did win once.
Right. I was like, let's not just stop at nominee and winner.
But think about that. I could have given that all up. It was painful. And so I want people to understand and remember the pain. I want people to know that because people look at my career and say, oh my gosh, I want to be her. But they didn't know all of the pain that I endured. But you've got to endure and you've got to persist.
Amen. And you've continued to be prolific throughout this process. When did the idea for the 7 Deadly Sins series come to you? Because now we're deep into it.
I know, right? Well, I had written a book called Stand Your Ground, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that book won every award. That's when I won the NAACP Image Award. And that was the best book of the year, the Library Journal, every award that I could win, that book won. And that book was my baby. I feel like I bled on those pages. But what was so interesting is that once I wrote that book, I could not write anymore. I was intimidated by my own book.
Mm.
And my agent was saying to me, Victoria, you don't get paid until you write a book, because I write full time. And I just couldn't get anything out. I kept thinking people are going to read this new book and think, oh my God, she needs to go get a job. It's so horrible. It's not Stand Your Ground. That's what I was thinking. And then my agent said something to me about writing something that's so totally different from Stand Your Ground that nobody will sit there and compare it. And I had been working with Vicky Stringer on something, and we were thinking about doing the 7 Deadly Sins together and something. And then she decided to leave publishing, and she said, you should do that. So that was something from a few years before. But then when my agent said, let's get something totally different, then we put together, let's do Lust. Now, I can't say for sure that I was committed to doing 7. But it sounded like a really good marketing thing to be able to say, oh, this is part of 7 Deadly Sins. And we started with Lust. So you can't get any different from Stand Your Ground.
No.
Except for Lust.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I got there, because I couldn't write. I was afraid to follow Stand Your Ground. And it worked, because people read Lust and totally forgot about Stand Your Ground.
And so now you have Lust, Greed, Envy, and now we're on to Pride. I guess in coming back to the 7 Deadly Sins and being really embedded in that Christian fiction realm, did you see all the success for this series that you've had? I mean, we got Lifetime movies. This is book 4 in the series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is book 5 in the series.
Oh, book 5, my bad.
Yeah, Lust, Envy, Wrath, and Greed. And
okay.
This is book 5. I didn't know, but before Lust hit the shelves, Patrick Bass, who was the book editor at Essence Magazine, read it. And he was friends with Sean Robinson, who was on Access Hollywood. And he knew she wanted to get into movies. And he called her and he said, you want to get into movies? Well, I've been following an author for 20 years. Her name is Victoria Christopher Murray. And if you want to get into movies, you need to read her book, Lust. And it's going to be part of the 7 Deadly Sins, because this is her most commercial book. He said she has a following, but this is her most commercial book. And so she was like, I know Victoria Christopher Murray. And so we were acquaintances. I mean, now we're really good friends, but we were acquaintances. And she had my number and everything. So she called me up and she said, I want to get into movies. I want to take this and start selling the 7 Deadly Sins series. It's brilliant. Do you have any other books? I was like, okay, let me explain. I didn't really plan on writing 7 books. That's a big commitment. She said, but you're going to write 7 if we can get a movie deal.
Yes, you are. Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay. So she said, do you have an idea for the second one? And I said, well, I was playing around with Envy, So she talked the whole book idea out with me and everything. She said, just start writing. When you have both, I'm going to go out and sell it as a movie. So then I wrote Envy. And so it was like a year later. And she was ready to go sell it and said, well, you're going to have to write all 7 because we're going to get 7 movies. I'm like, yeah, right. Well, we did. I mean, it wasn't this easy a story, but TD Jakes and Lifetime, well, she took it to them and Lifetime said to me, okay, so you got 2 books, write 1 more and we'll give you a 7-movie deal. But they wanted 3. They wanted 3 in the pocket. And I was miserable writing that 3rd book because I had to write it so fast. And I'm not a fast writer.
About write a book like it just takes a week or a day.
Yeah, I wrote that book in probably about 4 months. Because now everybody's sitting at the table waiting to finish a deal.
Waiting on you to when you
finish. And to read the book to see if it would be something they'd want to do. But I finished that book. They loved it. And I got a 7-movie deal.
This story gets better and better and better and better. I love it so much. Let's just jump into the book. Can you read something from Pride so that we can talk about it?
Yes.
Pride, a 7 Deadly Sins novel, follows Journey Alexander, a real estate broker in Houston who's built her success in less than stellar ways. When the dark parts of her past surround and confront her, she has to decide whether to put her pride aside and finally accept help and the consequences of her own actions. Here's Victoria.
So, Journey Alexander, she's going through some things here, but let's just read a little bit of it. So, he's the one who got away. I stood at the threshold of Ethan's office in the prestigious William Towers, where he sat behind his mahogany desk, with only the dim light of the desk lamp illuminating the space. It was a wonder he didn't hear me enter. He should certainly be more aware of his surroundings at this time of night, although I guess with a 32nd floor office in this zip code, there were no concerns about safety. And I knew how Ethan was when he focused. Without even a glimpse of his brown eyes, I imagined his expression, thoughtful, as he studied the papers on his desk. A legal brief, perhaps? For a moment longer, I stood staring at the man I once loved. And then with those words, something stirred inside of me. Once loved? Everything that I felt that Ethan Thomas was supposed to be long gone, severed by the last words he'd spoken to me before he stomped out of my door. But now old emotions collided with common sense and exploded into confusion. I wasn't sure what to feel. There was a time when something would have stirred inside of Ethan just having me in such close proximity. But now, I guess not. I tapped on the door. Ethan raised his head and then his shoulders straightened. "I'm sorry," I said when he didn't speak. Stepping inside, I added more to my apology. "I didn't mean to startle you." His eyes followed me as I sauntered toward him, but still he said nothing, and I tried to discern what I saw in his eyes. If his complexion were lighter, I believe I would have seen the heat rising beneath his skin, or maybe just the opposite. Maybe I would have watched the blood drain from him, since the ways his eyes widened and his brows shot up, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. Finally, his lips moved. "Journey." He still said my name like it was the opening notes of a love song. "What are you doing here?" And if you want to know any more about what she's doing there, you gotta read Pride.
Yes. So I've read Pride and I know what happens next.
So you know what happens next.
Oh, yeah, I know what happens next. We about to get into it. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but we're going to get into this book because Journey, ma'am, worked my last nerve.
Because of Pride, right? Because of Pride. And that was what's so hard. This will probably be the last of the 7 deadly sins that I'll do. So I'll do 5 of the 7. But that's what's so hard about writing these books. These people I had to write about the sin. And so the people had to be lusting. They had to be envious. They had to be greedy. They had to be filled with wrath. And so how do you like someone that's the center of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was tough making a likable character, even though I worked hard at it. I tried to work harder than all of them because they're deep in the sin, which is the purpose of the book.
It wasn't even so much the dislike, for me at least. Like, I'm fine if I don't really like a character. I mean, I write characters that I don't particularly like.
Exactly.
So like it wasn't likability. I think, and I don't know if this is true of the other novels in the series, but initially it read like greed to me. And it was like greed and pride, because so much of it was about what she was doing for money.
Yeah, what she had accomplished too.
What she had accomplished. And then she had a lot of pride in like, look at me and where I've come from. But I think what drove me up a wall was that the moment the new love interest is introduced, I'm like, something ain't right. Something ain't right.
Yeah.
And you did a very good job of like talking about the shadows in his face. I was like, something ain't right.
Yeah.
With this man.
Yeah.
Even though it sounds like you were writing under duress because of the contracts, was it fun for you to try to really explore and humanize these sinful qualities in people that we may know and love?
I think that's what I did with all the books. I humanized the sin. You know, I put the sin in the body of a real, you know what I mean by real person. And so it was fun. I was writing one book a year with that. So it was fun putting it together. And what was really fun was I never wanted to forget that these were deadly sins. So because it could be lust, the sin, or it could be lust, the deadly sin, meaning there's a price to pay. And then it became, well, you can't kill everybody, you know. the ending in every book can't be everybody dies. So maybe in lust, but then I had to find something different for envy. And then I had to find something different for greed and for wrath. And I wanted it to be a high price paid for each one. So that was always interesting because I never knew how the book was going to end. The ending for Pride is so different from what I thought the ending of Pride was going to be.
Wow. So like, this is a writing question. So like, you just sat down at the computer with the idea for the sin and started banging out a story without having like a plot point idea outline? You were just going?
Yeah, I mean, I what I try to do with all of my novels is I first want to know the characters. So I develop the characters, their names, where they live. I do a whole character resume. And once I know who the characters are, then I start letting them tell the story. And you picked up something very interesting. That's true. When you said at first it read like greed, because here's the challenge with writing Pride. Lust, envy, wrath, and greed are outward sins. So you can see someone lusting. You can see someone being envious. You can see the greed, and obviously you can see wrath. You can't see pride. Pride is an inward sin. It's what they feel inside. It's what they're saying to themselves. It's those kinds of things, but it still had to be inward. That was hard, and I'm done. Woo!
Wow. So you say you're only going to write 5.
Only going to write 5.
Only going to write 5. Okay. So then what's next? Because you've had a book a year and then you got a series going.
Oh, yeah.
What's next?
Well, I wrote a novel called The Personal Librarian, which was historical fiction, which did very, very well. It got me to the New York Times for the first time, and all the bestsellers list is selling like crazy. I didn't even know books sold this much. I mean, I had no idea. And it's just that I think at this point in my career, after having written 30 plus books, and I'm looking for something different, that one of the things I love about historical fiction is unburying these Black women who've been hidden and telling their stories. And while the research is way more extensive than we have to do in commercial fiction, it's almost a little easier for me to write. Because remember, I told you I start with my characters when I'm writing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to do a whole resume of where they live, who they are, who their siblings are, what happened in their life. I have to do all that.
It's already there.
It's already there. All I have to do is put it in order, change some things around, because it is still fiction. And I'm still telling a story, a great story with the drama and everything that has to happen. But the foundation is there. And so I love, love, love historical fiction. And I've just found all of these Black women who have been just hidden and buried from us. Like, for example, did you know that the March on Washington only happened because of a Black woman?
I want to say I've heard that, but I can't call her name.
Yeah, Anna Hedgeman. So what I wanted to do was a book about the 3 women who made the March on Washington happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we have Anna. Nobody would have ever heard the I Have a Dream if it wasn't for Mahalia
Jackson talking about tell them about the dream. Yep.
Yeah. Then the third woman, and it's really 2 of them, they needed $100,000 to do the March on Washington. The people who raised the most money, who got them to $100,000, was Judy Garland and Eartha Kitt.
Come on.
So I wanted to do a book on the March on Washington. Wouldn't have happened without these women.
Yes.
And that's enough. So there's so many things I want to do, to teach, to encourage, to motivate, and to entertain that I'll be able to do through historical fiction.
Come on, answering the call. I'm here for it. So let's switch to a speed round in the game before I let you go for what's soon to be the afternoon. What is your favorite book?
Probably Native Son, because it was the first book I read by a Black person. But I have so many, but probably Native Son, because that opened the world for me.
Who is your favorite author?
Richard Wright, because he opened the world for me.
What do you think is the best book to movie adaptation other than your own?
The Vow.
Name a hidden figure that you think everyone should know.
Oh my God. It's my first solo historical fiction book that I'm working on. Have you ever heard of Jessie Redmond Fawcett?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that, because when I was reading the first article about her, and the person who was saying that she hated the fact that Black women authors did not know this woman. If you have a favorite author during the Harlem Renaissance, she was their favorite editor, and she discovered them. She discovered Langston Hughes, published him first before anybody else. County Cullen, Jean Toomer, Nella Larson. She and Nella Larson, all of those people. And she was the most prolific writer during the Harlem Renaissance, with 4 novels herself. She wrote the first novel about the Black middle class, because before her books, everybody was a servant, an auntie, an uncle, just fresh out of slavery. And she showed Black people in a way that white publishers were like, what is this? These are Black people who solve their problems like white people. That doesn't make sense. I can't believe that people don't know Jessie Redmond Fawcett. I didn't know her. I'm so glad to hear that you did, but you're like one of 4 people that...
So I cheated, because I know of Jessie Fawcett because I read Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois by Honoré Fanon Jeffers, who's on the show last year. But if money were no object, where would you go? What would you do? And where would you live?
I'd still be here in Washington, D.C., but there's this $3 million condo that I went and looked at right on the water. That's where I would be living, because I've been blessed to travel so much. I went to Dubai for a literary event, and girl, it was for lust. They had me talking about stand your ground and lust. I could not believe it.
In Dubai?
In Dubai, I could not believe it, and I felt horrible. I just only wanted to talk about stand your ground. And then I've been all over Europe. So I've been blessed to travel a lot. And so there's no place that I would say I would go that I know I'm going. You know what I mean? But I would live in those condos right on the Potomac. I've been looking at them. I've been saying I don't play the lottery, but I'd like to win the lottery.
I understand. I understand. Um, what brings you joy?
Reading and writing. I mean, and so because of course it would be my daughter, my granddaughter. I have a wonderful son in love too, but my granddaughter, because she runs to me and she goes, Gigi, Gigi, and she's only 4. But when I'm by myself, what I can have so much joy reading and writing. And I can't say which I like better. So I do both every day.
What brings you peace, Miss Victoria?
Oh, I'm so old now that I just have peace. I don't worry. I don't worry. I pray. And I just am at the age, and I'm so glad to be here, where I know I can't change things. So I can just do the best that I can. And just like I just got my tax bill for last year. That's enough to make somebody just weep. But I can't change it. And I just need to I'm very peaceful and happy with the fact that I can pay it. Peace is understanding that it is what it is, and take a deep breath, and you're going to be okay.
Amen. So our game is called Rewriting the Classics. Name one book that you've read that you wish you would have written it.
Oh my gosh. I wish I had written Yellow Wife by Shadika Johnson. It's historical fiction, but it is brilliant. It is brutal and beautiful at the same time. There were moments when I couldn't breathe, and I didn't know a book. I had never had a book that almost stopped me from breathing. So that's the one that immediately comes to mind. And I was like, dang. I wish that was my book. I wish I had written it. I remember, this is a back in the day book, Trying to Sleep in a Bed You Made by Virginia DeBerry and Donna Grant. They were probably out in 1996. And that was another book that took off. And when I read it, I was like, man, I wish I'd written that book. So those are 2 that I can think of.
Okay. Name a book where you want to change the ending, and how would you do it?
Oh, I remember one of Terry McMillan's books. I can't remember it, where I said, man, I would have put them back together. Was that Disappearing Acts?
Mm-hmm.
I think I would have put them back together. I can't remember, his name was Franklin.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. There was something I would have done differently with Franklin, only because I wanted a happier or different ending.
Franklin and Zora, but they went through so much. I don't think they needed to be together.
I don't know if I would change a lot. Oh, Take My Hand by Dolan Perkins. And I even told her.
Oh, don't tell me, because I haven't read it yet. I gotta. So my next watch, my next read.
There's something that even when I read it, I said, I thought this was going to happen. And he was like, I never thought of that. So there's something I would do in that. I love that book.
Okay. Final question for Rewriting the Classics. You may answer it, you may not. But name a book that you think is overrated or overtaught, and why?
Oh, I don't think any book can be overtaught. I don't. I just think that everybody, you know what I love about writing and then reading? Mm-hmm. People will then come to me after they've read a book and they'll say, this touched me and changed me in this kind of way. And I will say, what page is that on? Because that was never my intent when I was writing the book. And so that's why I think there can be nothing that's overtaught. It will just give a different generation. I think about Catcher in the Rye. That was so important to me when I was in school, and they're still teaching it when they're not banning the books. I think about Man, Child, and I think about some of the books that they had me reading when I was in high school, like the autobiography of Malcolm X and Man, Child, and the Promised Land. And you can't give the autobiography of Malcolm X to too many people. Everybody
Wow.
needs to be reading that. So I just think that I can't think of a book. I don't think there is a book that can be overtaught because everybody will bring their own experiences to it when they're reading.
Mm-hmm. All right. And so my final question for you today, Miss Victoria, when you are dead and gone and among the ancestors, what would you like someone to write about you and the legacy of words and work that you left behind?
I think the most important thing, and I think about this with every book that I write, is that I really care about the quality of it. I'm not just putting words on a page. So when I hear people say they can write a book in a week, I'm like, you don't even know your characters. So how can you do that? And so I want somebody to say that she cared about writing. I care about what people are going to say about the writers who were here 100 years from now. I think about all of us who are writing today and what we're putting out. And I care about the fact that 100 years from now, they're either going to say that was a good group. It may not have been the Harlem Renaissance, but it was a good group. Or if they're going to say they just didn't even care. They just put words on paper and they didn't care how they were representing. And I believe we're representing our race. And even though I will write about a white character or something in a book, we're representing. And our books are things that are in time capsules. Mm-hmm. So when somebody reads them, if they stand the test of time, it's when somebody reads these books in 50 years, they're going to see what was happening. And I don't want them to look back and say, well, with Victoria Christopher Murray, it was a hot mess. I want them to look back and say, she did the dang thing.
Amen. Thank you, Victoria.
This was wonderful.
Big thank you to Victoria Christopher Murray for being here today on Black and Published. Make sure you check out Victoria's latest novel, Pride, a 7 Deadly Sins novel, out now from Simon & Schuster. And if you're not following Victoria, check her out on the socials. She's at Victoria ECM on Twitter and Victoria Christopher Murray on Instagram. That's our show for the week. If you like this episode and want more Black and Published, head to our Instagram page. It's at Black and Published, and that's BLK and Published. There, I've posted a bonus clip from my interview with Victoria about starting her own imprint and helping other authors publish their works. Make sure you check it out and let me know what you think in the comments. I'll holler at y'all next week for a bonus episode when our guest will be Lori L. Tharps, who's going to give us the full tea on what it means to be a ghostwriter.
So the word for ghostwriter in Spain is negro or negro literario, like literary black person, but the term is more referring to like slave. So, which is the same in French. And the French term is actually what the translation would be like the N-word. Like that's their word for it. But the idea is a ghostwriter does all the work and gets no credit, like a slave, like a black person.
That's next week on Black and Published. I'll talk to you then. Peace.